Okay, this video is to help people understand how to get the shock absorber in and out of their KTM 640, enduro, adventure, LC4 models. And this actually will probably apply to most KTMs, but definitely this one. The shock absorbers, as you know, they're getting older, they're starting to leak, and really the exhaust wraps right around the exhaust, the shock absorber. So it's cooking the whole time. So you're always cooking the oil inside the shock absorber. And a lot of places say you should change the shock absorber oil at least once a year. And it costs about $100 or so to have a shock absorber rebuilt, have the oil changed, and have it recharged with nitrogen. So when you first get this bike and you look at it, you're like, how do I get the shock out? Every manual and stuff will actually say you have to pull off the whole subframe, which is the battery, the ignition, the computer, your muffler, all this stuff, and it will say that you need to do that, but you don't actually have to. It took me about 30 minutes to get the shock out, and 15 minutes of that was trying to figure out how to get the seat off. I did have to go to some of the forums and found that there is one bolt right in the middle of the seat. If you have not had your seat off, and this is a fairly new bike to me and I had not yet had the seat off, that one bolt comes through the frame here from inside the fender well. So inside the fender well you'll see 3 bolts in a row, and the middle bolt is the one that takes off the seat. Once you take that off, the seat slips off of the there's a washer on the back side of the fuel tank. Let's come over here. This fuel tank right there. The seat slips under that. So once that bolt comes off, lift it up, slide it out. Okay. Once you get that done, take off your side panels, and then you've got some plugs on this side over here. So you've got 3 plugs. 1, 2, 3. Okay, these 3 plugs right here, and they connect to these here. They're all different, so you don't really have to worry about getting them in the right place. There's only one way to do it. When you put it back together, put some dielectric silicone in there to waterproof them. You have your oil breather, which attaches to the frame here, and then these cables actually reach without having to disconnect them. So over here you have the bolt, and there is the tapered bolt that will go through there. It's an Allen head, and that goes into there on the frame. That is what actually secures your subframe. When you put this back together, make sure you Loctite it. You can actually see this thing is wearing out because it hasn't been tightened up enough, and ideally I should get another one of these bolts before it completely strips out and destroys these threads. Okay, so once you get that done, you can actually loosen your bolt here that attaches your exhaust pipe to the rear subframe. Loosen up this bolt. It just allows it to move a little bit, and this is on your exhaust here, and it just allowed it to slip a little bit, but it really didn't hardly move at all. And at that point, we'll walk around the other side here. We can walk around the other side here. Okay. At that point, you can actually push this frame back after loosening the air boot. So you loosen the air boot here. There's one screw on the top there, and you can just loosen that clamp up, and then pretty much this thing is ready to come back. You might have to cut some zip ties to give it a little bit of slack if someone has zip tied this like they did on this one. They had zip ties all over the place. Then you can just push the frame back, and you can see the whole frame moves up and down. Okay, like this. I did actually have to take this off. This is the brake reservoir, and I just did that because it's in the way of the shock bolt. Alright, so when this is all the way up, that's where it sits, and then push it down just a little bit. You don't need much, and then you can slide the shock in And I still got to clock the shock. They didn't line it up totally straight. There we go. Okay, so here's the shock absorber. If you could come around this side, please. Okay, so here's the shock, and you've got your rebound adjustment is on the bottom, and your compression adjustment's on the top. This is how you adjust your spring length. They call for 1 inch, and if I'm looking at the book right, 1 inch from the shock itself to the threads is what they're saying is the proper adjustment for a 165-pound rider. If you weigh more, you're going to want to tighten this down. If you weigh less, you can loosen it up. So that's the basic adjustment. Now once this was loose, and unfortunately I already took it apart, the shock will drop right in here. And you can literally just drop it right in there. There's the shock. Ta-da! So that's where the shock is sitting. And if you could back up a little bit so I can see the whole bike here. Okay. So you have the shock here, and you can see when you go to take it out in the first part, you take out the 1 bolt here, 1 bolt on the bottom, and that's this bolt here. When you put this back in, you want to lube it up, and then just wiggle this out, and you can bring the shock absorber and spring the whole assembly right out this way. So that's all there is to it, to doing one of these shocks, and hopefully this will help you out. Of course, when you're in here, check everything else out, make sure all your bolts are tight. When you put everything back together, lube anything that turns, twists, moves. If it moves it, lube it. And on these 2 tapered bolts, I would definitely suggest using a blue Loctite all the way over the threads. You want to make sure that the threads are completely covered with the Loctite, because it is a plastic type of a material when it dries, and it will seal the threads from rusting, and it will prevent a little bit of wear and prevent some electrolysis going on between the two. If you get some current going through here between the different parts of the bike and using the ground, it can actually help prevent some of that from happening. Also, you want to Loctite these, because obviously this little tiny bolt, that little thing, is all that holds this whole subframe from falling back. So this little 10 millimeter, the shaft is a 10, and that's I believe a 5 millimeter Allen for that. So those 2 things there, that's it. If these fall out, the whole tail end of your bike's going to fall back, and you're going to have a very bad ride back, because you won't be able to sit on the seat, and everything's going to be flopping all over the place. Alright, thanks very much for watching, and I hope this helps you out.